Welcome to the Do Everything with Love podcast, hosted by yours truly, David,
Amber,
Myron,
Steven.
And we are a community learning, growing, and engaging in dialogue around topics relevant to today's culture through our book club. So love God, love people, do everything with love. Let's get this show on the road. Yeah?
Let's do it.
all right, let's start off with check-ins. How y'all doing?
We are doing fantastic.
Yes, we are doing good. Staying healthy, staying whole out in these streets. And yeah, we're doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would definitely say that this week's been a crazy week. We've been busy. I feel like 1 week we're putting out the first episode of the podcast, and then the next we're dropping live videos on our Patreon. So we've been very busy on our Patreon, for sure. And a lot of hours go into each of those posts, but I would say it's definitely worth my creative energy. I mean, it's definitely something that I pull late nights doing, but nah, it's been worth it. You know, it's worth it.
Shout out to David. He's been handling a lot on the back end. He's been carrying most of this weight. So all props to David. Very soon, Waddy and I will take a little bit of slack off of him.
New laptops coming soon.
Yeah.
That's right. That's why we have a Patreon. You know what I'm saying, to help fund these things. And so, we just appreciate just all the supporters that we've had. We've been getting some more supporters since our last episode, and I can say that I am just grateful and thankful because I think people are interested in what we have to say as far as the knowledge being dropped, from our books that we've been reading, and our perspectives on it. And I think it's cool, man. It's cool to have this podcast channel.
Yeah. Sure.
So, but anyways, I mean, what else is going on? What else is in the news in the world of Myron and Waddy and Amber?
I've been traveling.
Oh, where'd you go?
Jamaica.
You went to Jamaica?
My favorite country in the whole world.
See, that's one of the benefits of being able to work remotely, huh?
Yep. And I'm going to UK next week.
Oh, sweet.
Oh,
wow.
Working there too.
Oh,
man.
Yeah.
You just need an excuse to go somewhere, don't you?
Basically.
That's what's up. And how was Jamaica? What'd you do out there?
I danced a lot.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ate a lot. And I actually worked. I did do work.
Was it tough working while in like an area that just feels vacation-y?
No, it actually wasn't. Because I knew I just had a block of time to really just zone in. And it was a specific thing that I actually wanted to work on that would help my team out. So stay focused, and there really wasn't any meetings.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. So now you're like, okay, I can do this. I can travel and work. It's not difficult.
It's not difficult.
Sometimes you just need to change the scenery, too.
Exactly. That's actually what helps you focus.
Yeah. It's really nice. Yeah, I just did that. Actually. Went to D.C. And just took a couple of days. I had a lot of work to get done.
Yeah.
And so, actually, that's where I got a lot of this Patreon stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that. But Myron and Waddy, what's up with y'all?
Same old for me. Just getting work done at home.
Yeah.
Another work from home situation. But just getting stuff done.
That's what's up.
Yeah. I will say I do have a recommendation for if anybody wants to get away and work from like an Airbnb out in Western Maryland. There's like these tree houses you can rent.
What?
It was beautiful. And David, I know that's up your alley. It's in the woods.
Yeah, man. I love these.
You need to go away. I'll hit you all up. I think it's called Ella's Tree House.
I'm going.
Ella's Enchanted Tree House, something like that.
I'm there.
Check it out. Cool spot. Shout out to Ella and that team. Very well done. Great furnishings. You can tell they put a lot of love into those Airbnbs.
That's
cool.
what's up, man.
Thank you for joining the Do Everything with Love podcast. If you'd like to continue to take the journey with us, please hit us up at withLove across all streaming platforms. Our music is everywhere, all right? And if you want a physical copy, hit us up at bandcamp.com, and you might even score yourself a signed copy of our album. Thanks.
Bet. Well, to change tunes a little bit, let's talk about Creativity Inc. For y'all that have not a chance to read the book, please get it. We're reading it. We got one more month until we move on to the next book. But in the meantime, we've been reading Creativity Inc. for those of you that are just tuning in, by Ed Catmull, who is the president of Pixar. And basically this book is about navigating a creative environment and how to sustain a creative environment and how to push your team to the next level as far as utilizing that creative energy towards, like in his world, making, producing, and creating Pixar movies, right? And he also was part of Disney, took over Disney Animation as well. So he had a plethora of experience to share with us about what it means to navigate the creative world and kind of his memoirs into looking at the lessons learned, from his experiences. So that's over, like, this book has probably over 30 years of experience just being put into this book.
That's a good point.
So which has been great. So with that being said, every podcast we do a hot topic, and so this topic was actually voted by you all, and so again, this is why it's so important that we need you guys on these polls, so that way we can. We're gonna keep putting out polls throughout the weeks, just to get an idea of what you guys want to hear next. So the poll that we got, the question that we got, is how do you navigate creating the unmade future, right? And this is particularly for creative visionaries, right? So with that being said, and that's being pulled from chapter 11 called The Unmade Future, that Ed Catmull begins to talk about how do you navigate creating the unmade future. So with that being said, he actually starts the book off with saying it's all about perspective, right? It's all about how you look at the unmade future, in the sense of a mental model, right? How do you envision doing the work within it's all about the environment that you work in, right? And he gave us different examples, right? One of them was he actually leaned on his fellow directors that he had directing different movies. So for example, Brad Bird, for me was really kind of piqued my interest because he's the director of The Incredibles, which is like one of my favorite movies, Pixar movies actually. And he equates his creative journey as skiing, right? Going fast, right? You can't, one wrong move, you think about crashing, guess what? You're going to crash. And he actually goes into how he crashed a lot, learning how to ski. And I think that's important because it's important to fail hard and fail fast. I think you may have heard that in some of your self-help conferences that you've been to. But at the end of the day, it really does mean having the attitude of being able to look at, looking around your surroundings, looking at how much work you have to do. Because for me, I operate, more in like a director role, I would say, in the band. And, all the time it always feels like there's too much work to do and there's too little time. And so it gets to a point where you can't help but sometimes feel fear, feel inadequate, and so, his response is take your time. It's just like skiing. You don't necessarily think about, exactly where you're going to be or how you're going to navigate it, but you have to go with the flow. You have to, if you don't think about crashing, if you just think about, I'm going to enjoy this moment and get to the finish line, you're not focused so much on actually having to fail, and so the more practice that he had gotten doing that, the less that he failed actually from the lessons learned. As I hope that we all get to a point where we all don't fail as much, and so that's been kind of my my deal with starting this Patreon endeavor, because that's been challenging. Just putting out the live music every month, then doing these podcasts. We're even, these podcast episodes are just a pilot right now, right? We're trying to get a hang of just putting out podcasts, just once a month at this point. But, we want to be able to put out more podcasts, on a bi-weekly, if not weekly basis. And so we know that kind of stuff takes time. And really just being able to take the lessons learned early on now, from the feedback that you guys give us, the feedback that we get from each other, and being able to apply that moving forward. And so I'm just glad that, part of this creative journey is us being able to try new things, us being able to see what works, to see what doesn't work, and then be able to move forward and learn from that, and be better for it. So that's one thing that I've especially enjoyed in Patreon, doing the Patreon work, but I've also enjoyed this like in our With Love journey too. You know, all these years, we started back in 2013, and that's been our kind of MO, is just trying different things, trying new things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and that's been a marathon, right? And it's definitely not a sprint. So, but that's me. Myron, what about you, man? What'd you get from chapter?
Chapter 11, I mean, it had a lot of those mental models that we're talking about, different ways of avenuing and viewing how to look at the future and how to achieve your goals. One of the ones that kind of stuck out to me was one kind of George Lucas and Byron Howard shared. They were both directors for Disney. Everyone's more familiar with George Lucas, of course, but the idea of they were talking about musicians and athletes, how they have this tendency to like get in the zone, and like when they're in that zone, they're so focused and so dialed in that it's a culmination of all their experience, all that time practiced, and just being in it completely. Like they're 100% in what they're doing, to the point where it's like reflex, like, you know, you've seen like LeBron James or Kobe Bryant in those moments where like, oh, how did they make that shot with all that pressure? And it looked like it was nothing to them. Right. Like they were dialed in. And we've seen musicians play on stage, and they're just so tuned into like their instrument that you wonder like, yo, how is he doing this? How are they hitting those notes? Like you see Beyonce on stage, and like she's choreography down cold. She's hitting all these stuff. Like, how do you even rehearse like stuff like that? And like those type of people are in the zone. Like even as we're musicians, we have to practice that, but that's something that you can't just replicate. It's something that just kind of happens naturally as you're going throughout the motions. And it's interesting because like this book came out, what year did we say this came out?
2014.
2014. But only 2020 Pixar had that movie Soul that came out, and it really, they went in kind of deep into like that aspect of, you know, people can get into this space where you're just so locked into a thing, and it's just, you kind of transcend seemingly what you believe that you can do, and you transcend like the limits of your imagination and creativity, and you essentially become the thing that you're trying to create. It's kind of just I mean, Soul's an amazing movie. Y'all should check it out if you haven't seen it. But it's really, really deep. It's crazy thing. Like, these are kids movies. Like, yo, they're hitting some deep points in this thing.
Actually,
like life and death.
You
gotta see that. Yeah, it's really good.
It gets to the core, literally your soul. It's really crazy.
It really does.
And they actually try to they go spiritual a little bit.
Oh, they do.
Movie. Yeah,
they go really deep.
It's called Soul.
So it's kind of crazy.
And they're just like that aspect of it. It really kind of resonated with me, and I think that's something that I think a lot of people strive to achieve. Especially creatives, and not even just like, you know, artistic creative people in, you know, working regular jobs, and they can get in the zone with what they're doing. And like there's just so many different avenues that it can reflect in each and every person's life. So
now, counter to that, if you don't go with the flow,
yes,
what happens?
If you don't go with, I forget what that term that they called in the movie. It was like kind of like that wasteland where you're trying to get into it, but it's just not working, and you're like,
you're forcing it almost.
Yeah, you're forcing it. Yeah. And it becomes unnatural, and you just like start perpetuating the cycle of kind of failure, and you get like locked into this a rut essentially. You know, everybody's had like, you know,
the sunken place.
Everybody's had that in some form or another, where you're trying to get to the zone, but you can't force those kind of things. And, you know, we've all experienced that. We've had songs that we've thought were going to be a hit, and we're trying to force it, and it's just, but that's the process. That's
the process. No, that's true. I mean, I think it's also part of the creative process too. What I found in going with the flow is, when you go with the flow, it doesn't expend as much energy as going against the flow. Yeah. You know, so it's like when you're trying to force something, it almost feels like you're working extra hard to try to make something work that's not working in your favor, you know? And then you have, when you are going with the flow, and it's just things kind of start to click, or you know, you're doing something that might be counterintuitive, but it ends up working in the end, you know? So shout out to that as far as being able to just go with the flow. So that's very much Myron for y'all, if y'all don't know Myron.
Well, as Bruce Lee said, be water.
So yeah. So Amber, what about you? How do you navigate creating the unmade future?
Yeah, so I'd like to take another example from the book, from the Rich Moore, who directed Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, so his mental model, it's like a maze, and that resonated with me because navigating a long distance marriage is like a maze. You want to make sure that while you're trying to go through these different patterns and designs that you're kind of like feeling your way through, you know, even when you don't know where the other side is, right? But then at the same time, kind of just like keeping the hope alive that you will get to the other side. So if you kind of just go all frantic, as Rich Moore put it, if you get all frantic and kind of just start like moving all willy-nilly, then you sort of will lose sight of like what you're actually trying to get to.
So how do you get out of the maze?
By feeling your way through, like you kind of just making sure like you're
taking it
having
one step
your
at a time.
hand one step at a time, your hands still on the walls, right? And kind of just within yourself knowing that at the end of the day you'll get to the other side. And to relate that to navigating a long distance marriage, which I'm currently in right now, you kind of starting to think about how you can just stay the course, essentially. And so when it comes to being creative in that, sometimes, like for example, while I'm in the maze of this long distance marriage, I actually don't know what to do next when it comes to like maintaining that communication, maintaining that connection. But again, like I'm saying, like as you're feeling your way through, it's like you just making sure that you are staying the course.
Yeah, I mean, part of it too, I think, is that like in the maze, the path almost reveals itself to you, right? And the project is revealing itself to you. I don't know if you guys like tried ever making clay, for example. You know, when you're playing around with clay and you're trying different things, almost the clay begins to form itself, right? Even though your hands might be guiding the spindle and it's forming in your hands, you begin to start to see it take shape over time to the point where it's like, okay, I can see where it's almost a give and take. The creative flow is a give and take kind of transaction in my mind, where it's like you're giving your energy, but at the same time you're also taking from what the path, the journey that you're on, and it's giving back to you.
Yeah.
You know, and so
and literally just letting it flow.
Yeah, letting it flow.
You have to let it flow,
and eventually you'll find yourself out the maze. Eventually, because at that point you're just been following the path that's been in front of you. You know, and there are dead ends, right? That happen.
There are dead ends,
but then you learn from that. You turn around and you go back to the main path, and
exactly.
then you know.
So that's what it's like. That's what it's like. It's quite a journey, and you have to literally, again, just stay the course, because that's like creativity. You don't know what the end is like.
You brought up a great point in our production meeting about something about marathons. And creativity takes time. Yeah,
creativity takes time. It's a marathon,
right,
not a sprint.
Yeah.
And that's literally what a marriage is like, right?
It's definitely not a sprint.
It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Yeah. So it's like literally, again, staying the course and making sure your partner is there along with you in that maze.
Yeah, and you can't quit when you're in the maze either, right?
Oh, you'll never get to the other side.
Yeah, it takes work.
It takes work.
You can't sit down.
Right.
Like, I'm not playing in the maze anymore.
Yeah.
You're just going to be there.
You're just going to be lost.
Yeah. So that's what resonated with me.
But I feel like, it's interesting because some people's mazes, metaphorically speaking, are seasons. They almost seem like a season for some folks, Like, even from a sense of, some people go through seasons where they just feel lost, you know? I feel like artists go through seasons like that where they just feel lost, or in general, marriage. Back to your example, Amber, where there are seasons where you guys just sometimes just feel lost. You know, it's like you guys encounter issues or problems,
right?
Like in any marriage, where you don't necessarily have the answer to them, right? Right away. And
that's a good point about seasons, because like right now, the long distance part of our marriage is a season.
Yeah.
Right. And there will eventually be a time where there's a season where we are in person, and then that will be a whole nother maze,
right,
to navigate.
Yeah. So that's crazy.
Is the analogy always to get out of the maze? Because I mean, anybody watch Westworld? Am I the only one?
I've watched a few episodes. Yeah.
Well, the idea of a maze is a very crucial thing, especially to like the first 2 seasons. But they're more so trying to focusing on going into the maze, and like their idea is if you're not careful with your path going inward, you'll get lost going outward. Like the outside of the maze is actually where you lose yourself. Okay. So they're trying to find that center, because in the center is who you are, is the identity that they're trying to find within it. So I was just like, there could be different forms of just like the analogy we're just.
Yeah, we could take that another step further, because I think a lot of part of this chapter is dealing with adversity. So if the maze is a metaphor for adversity, and adversity builds character and lets you know deeper who you are, how you deal with difficult times and things of that nature, then yeah, I can see how calculated, well, not all adversity is calculated, but some stressors you put on yourself, like working out, it's to increase muscle growth or something like that. It's calculated stress to increase growth. So if you take that from a physical perspective to something intangible or spiritual, dare I say, adversity, hardships, things like that. The maze, finding the center is, where you can find what you're made of. Yeah, that is a really good point.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah. So speaking of mazes and running around, in the dark.
Yeah. So the one I picked was Pete Docter. And his was literally running in a dark tunnel without any lights, not knowing where the end is. And just double tap on what you said, Amber, staying the course. It's essentially what this is about. Putting in the effort to just keep going. Knowing that there is an end in the tunnel, you just don't know where it is, and that's the scary part. Yeah. And I'll just go back to working out. If you stay the course, if your food's right, you're consistent in your workouts, you will make it to your goal, whether it is to lose weight, gain weight, redo your body composition, whatever that is. And then you can also couple that with the parable of the sower. You got, you're planting seeds. So say you start the creative process, planting your seeds, start a podcast, you start writing music or anything like that. And then the end goal is, hey, I would like X amount of viewers or like X amount of listeners. That part in between is the scary part, because you don't know how much effort it's going to take to get where you are, how much time it's going to take, whether your stamina is enough. He's essentially saying your stamina is enough, you just got to keep going.
Keep going no matter what. No matter what the unknowns are.
Yeah, and that mental model of knowing that helps him to overcome adversity and helps him to keep going.
So don't quit.
Don't quit.
And you're not quitting because you're with the team.
That's true.
And you create with a team.
That's true. Yeah. I genuinely do believe creation takes more than one person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's biblical. I think that's also
yes, absolutely.
I think it's life. I don't think we're supposed to live life in a bubble,
in a vacuum.
Yeah. I mean, even if for those of you out there that might believe that creativity, there are solo artists out there that live like hermits and they put out stuff. It takes collaboration for people to consume your product too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's never done in a vacuum at this point, and I believe that creation is cyclical in the sense that you take the feedback of the people that consume your product. You take you might build you even might build what you created off of what others have created before you. That happens all the time in music, right? How many times have y'all heard a sample that's been reused in 5 different songs, right? I mean, how many times has Tupac or Mariah Carey has been sampled at this point, in today's music? James Brown, even for that matter. I mean, it's just all over. I mean, that's what hip hop is like right now. You know, it's
a lot
just,
of sampling.
It's just a lot of sampling. Kirk Franklin's notorious for that. You know, just sampling music. So that's awesome. I think, you know, the main gist. I think you guys have all had some really creative takes on what it means to navigate the unmade future. I think that's something that is not necessarily an easy thing to do, but at the same time, it is not a dead end either. You know, and even though, you know, you can look at it from a sense of fear, or you can look at it from a sense of an opportunity to invent the future, right? And being able to do that through your mental models. How do you? Life is, you know, perception is reality. You know, so how you view something, if it's, you know, climbing a mountain, or, you know, going, you know, skiing down a mountain, or, you know, navigating through a maze, right? Or feeling your way through the dark and not quitting, you know, whatever helps you envision that future, I think that's going to be key, right? Because without a vision, people perish, you know? Yeah. So, you know, ultimately, you know, I don't think it really matters what your model is, even if it's different than mine or different from each other's, as long as it helps you get to the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And really, what's essential is that each of you, build a framework that's building into what you're trying to create. And so those models really help embolden you as you essentially, you know, figure your way out through the dark of the future.
Hey y'all, this is Amber, president of Let Love Rise Foundation Incorporated, and we have officially launched. Check out letloverise.org. If you are a community organization with volunteer needs, go and sign up on our platform to promote all of your volunteer needs. And if you are a volunteer looking for ways to connect to your local community, looking for ways to make a difference, go on letloverise.org to sign up for these volunteer events. I'll see y'all at the next event. I'd like to end with this one last quote from Alan Kay, Apple's chief scientist. The best way to predict the future is to invent it.
I like ending on that note. Touche.
Invent your future.
Invent it.
Invent it.
It's not here.
Well, that wraps up episode 3 of the Do Everything with Love podcast. If anything, remember to love God, to love people, and to do everything
with love.